Did you get some of that good Snoop weed?
I've smoked with Unc before, yeah.
Yeah.
That clip of Lauren admitting she was close with Snoop had everyone thinking it was just some chill friendship. But now, fresh footage of the two together has people losing it. Fans are convinced there's more going on. Maybe even that Lauren had a hand in something much deeper than we thought. Let's get into it. The internet blew up the second new footage dropped of Snoop Dogg and Lauren London side by side. This wasn't just Snoop doing his usual cool uncle routine or posing for a quick camera moment. No, this video showed him standing next to Lauren London, the woman who shared her life with Nipsey Hussle before his tragic death. And that alone sent shockwaves across hip-hop. See, Lauren London isn't just some familiar face in Nipsey's circle. She is the circle. From that emotional tribute she gave at the Staples Center to her heartfelt speech at the BET Awards, she became the soul of Nipsey's legacy. Every time she speaks, it's like the whole community listens with respect and pain mixed together. So, when people saw Snoop right next to her, it wasn't just about them being in the same frame, it symbolized something bigger. Whoever stands beside Lauren London is standing next to the entire weight of Nipsey's empire. After his death, she wasn't just a grieving partner anymore. She became the living face of his memory, and that makes this new footage even harder to ignore. The way Lauren spoke about Nipsey didn't just honor him, it made her the heartbeat of his legacy. Brands pushed her front and center in campaigns. Award shows gave her the spotlight for emotional tributes, and every major documentary leaned on her voice to keep Nipsey's story alive. She became the face of his memory, whether she asked for it or not. She wasn't everywhere because she craved fame. She was everywhere because the culture needed her there. People wanted to see her, to hear her voice, to feel Nipsey's presence through her words. That attention transformed her into something more than a partner. She became a symbol, a chess piece in a bigger game where every move mattered. If you stood next to Lauren, you stood next to the living pulse of Nipsey's memory. And that's exactly why this new clip with Snoop shook people up.
Yeah, but you don't know till it's at your front door. I always say the front row at the funeral is different. You know, when you have to sit on, like, you know, I've been to a lot of funerals.
I bet.
I've never sat front row at one. That's different.
What does that do to you?
Shift your perspective on life. You know what I mean? Make you see not only that is life short, but that it's a gift, you know, and because everyone's time is so different.
Being close to Lauren isn't just casual, it carries meaning. In a world where Nipsey's legacy is still being debated, Snoop showing up in that frame didn't feel like a random coincidence. It looked strategic. People couldn't help but wonder if there was more going on behind the scenes. But to really get why fans reacted so strongly, you've got to rewind to that tragic day when Nipsey was killed. Those gunshots outside the Marathon store didn't just silence an artist, they broke a city. Los Angeles didn't just lose a rapper, it lost a man who uplifted his community, built businesses, and proved that you can rise above the block without abandoning it. When someone becomes that powerful, their loss hits different. Love turns into pain, loyalty battles with betrayal, and the aftermath gets messy. Nipsey's brother, Black Sam, stepped in instantly as the guardian of his legacy. He wasn't just grieving, he was protecting. He made sure everyone knew that Nipsey's empire would stay in the family's hands, and anyone trying to twist or exploit his name would have to answer for it. Those weren't just emotional words from Black Sam. They were a warning shot, loud and clear. He knew the moment Nipsey was gone, the vultures would start circling. Opportunists were waiting to swoop in, hoping to cash in on Nipsey's name. But Sam wasn't having it. He was ready to guard that empire with everything he had. But here's where things got real messy. Nipsey's empire wasn't just built on papers, contracts, or deals. It was built on trust, loyalty, and real relationships. And when emotions run that deep, relationships can break faster than money stacks. Even some of Nipsey's own circle started showing cracks. Brick Baby himself admitted that he and Black Sam clashed after Nipsey's passing. And it all came down to one thing: loyalty. That's the wild part about losing someone like Nipsey. It didn't just bring people together, it forced everyone to choose sides. Suddenly, every handshake looked suspicious, every alliance got questioned, and grief turned into paranoia. People started wondering who was really for Nipsey and who was just pretending. Then out of nowhere came Charleston White's bombshell claim that had the whole internet talking. He said what nobody else wanted to say out loud.
That disrespect, bro. You in their presence, bro. You better swear. In their presence, ain't nobody disrespected.
That Nipsey wasn't just taken out by one man, but by the jealousy of his own set. That statement hit like a slap. If that's true, it means Nipsey didn't just fall to the streets. His empire was attacked from within. That's not just betrayal. That's a breakdown of everything he built. And that's exactly where the music industry starts weaving itself into this tangled story. While Nipsey's family was fighting to protect his empire and the streets were drowning in jealousy, the music industry saw something else: opportunity. Nipsey had cracked a code most rappers never figure out. He owned his masters, his brand, and his block. That kind of power made him untouchable in a business that thrives on control. Independence was his crown jewel, and in an industry built on contracts and manipulation, that independence made him dangerous. Then came a wild claim straight from behind prison walls. Suge Knight himself connected the dots in a way that had everyone gasping. He said Puff was the one who messed with Nipsey's circle, introducing them to heavier drugs and chaos. This wasn't some casual partying. It was about weakening a movement from the inside out. That's a serious accusation, and it hit the culture like lightning. But Suge didn't stop there. He dropped another bomb, this time aimed at Snoop. According to him, Snoop was moving in the shadows, allegedly trying to bail out Keef D, the man linked to Tupac's murder, just because Keef had been talking too much. The idea alone had people spinning with theories and doubt. Only weeks after Nipsey's murder, Los Angeles was buzzing with suspicion. The Marathon store wasn't just a business anymore. It turned into sacred ground for fans, but also a battlefield for control. Everyone was asking the same burning questions. Who really had the right to speak for Nipsey? Who was protecting his name and who was just chasing clout? The whispers didn't stop. They grew louder by the day. People who'd known Nipsey for years started catching heat left and right.
All the big homies in the set was jealous of Nip, because all the young love Nip. Nip got bigger than the program, so Nip got clipped.
Some longtime affiliates were suddenly accused of using his name for clout. Interviews turned messy, and social media became a war zone. Every post, every caption, every photo got picked apart. Someone could stand in front of a Nipsey mural out of love and boom, they'd be labeled a fame chaser. Another person could say, "We were like family," and instantly get called a fake. It was total chaos, but that chaos didn't come out of nowhere. This was the aftermath of Nipsey's death, a full-on power vacuum where everyone wanted to claim a piece of his legacy. And when you look at all those puzzle pieces, you start to see why people were on edge. The community expected Lauren London to know that her role wasn't just emotional, it was symbolic. She wasn't just grieving the man she loved, she was carrying Nipsey's entire empire on her back. She became his torchbearer, the keeper of his legacy. So when Snoop started showing up close to Lauren, fans went wild. To them, it looked like Snoop wasn't just paying respect, he was reaching for that same torch. People started whispering that maybe Snoop wanted something from Nipsey's name, and that he'd do whatever it took to get it. Whether that's fair or not almost didn't matter, because the perception became reality. And that perception hit hard. Snoop Dogg didn't look like a mourner anymore. He looked like a strategist. Nipsey's death wasn't seen as just a tragic loss. It turned into a political moment in the West Coast scene. Standing beside Lauren gave Snoop proximity to Nipsey's memory. And with that came credibility. That credibility boosted his image as the West Coast elder statesman. Some folks saw it as natural, others thought it looked predatory. But no matter how you saw it, the end result was the same. The power shifted and everyone felt it. That footage didn't just spark gossip, it became a symbol of the bigger fight for Nipsey's throne. And make no mistake, there really was a throne. If you believe what Suge said earlier about Snoop, then the story starts to sound darker. Nipsey wasn't just taken out by one man, he was weakened, destabilized, and left wide open by forces way bigger than the block. And guess whose name Suge dragged into that story? Snoop Dogg. He accused Snoop of playing both sides, acting like family in public while moving differently behind closed doors. That's why this footage of Snoop and Lauren London hit so hard. It wasn't just about what was happening in the video. It was about what it meant. To Nipsey's family, it didn't look like unity. It looked like outsiders stepping into sacred territory. It looked like power quietly shifting from the streets to the industry. To others, it looked like an opportunity, a way to grab control of a legacy too powerful to ignore. And for the fans watching all of this unfold, that clip felt like confirmation of every rumor and suspicion that's been floating around since 2019. They couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was going on. And honestly, who can blame them for being suspicious? Everyone knows Snoop's history. His name always comes up when betrayal gets mentioned in hip-hop history.
But yet still, Big came out to California, and you don't see not one picture of him and Snoop together. You don't see not one place where they smoked a blunt together. Both of them like to smoke. We was in the studio with Bone Thugs and Harmony. Snoop never came over there. So you tell me, was they really that cool? Or it was just a facade that was put up?
Tupac Shakur, one of the greatest to ever touch a mic, was gunned down in Vegas back in 1996. And since then, the story's been told and retold 1,000 different ways. But no matter how the details change, one thing stays the same. People keep pointing fingers at those closest to him. And somehow, every time the conversation circles back, Snoop's name slips right back into it. Back when Tupac was alive, Snoop wasn't just a peer. He was his so-called brother in arms. That's why his name carries so much weight every time a new controversy surfaces. They made hits together, partied side by side, and shared the same stages like brothers. But behind the scenes, things weren't as tight as they looked. While Tupac was calling out his enemies, Snoop was getting way too comfortable with the very people Pac didn't trust. That move still has fans shaking their heads. Take Big Dre, for example. The same Big Dre who was allegedly in the car with Keef D the night Tupac was killed. Anyone truly loyal to Pac would have stayed far away from that circle, right? Not Snoop. Instead, he linked up with Big Dre for a mixtape after Tupac's death. That alone had the streets buzzing. When Tupac was killed in 1996, Snoop found himself in a strange position. Their bond had already been rocky in Pac's final days. Tension was in the air. But right after Pac's passing, Snoop suddenly became one of the loudest mourners out there. He started speaking about Pac's greatness, aligning himself with the tragedy and at the same time cozying up to people who were allegedly tied to it. It looked like he was reshaping his image right in front of everyone. Just think about that for a second. Your brother gets murdered and the suspects are still walking around, yet instead of cutting ties, you start making music with them? That doesn't sound like loyalty, it sounds like betrayal, and it didn't stop there. Over the years, Snoop's been caught more than once stretching or twisting stories about Pac, sometimes flipping the truth to make himself look better. It's those moments that keep people wondering where his true loyalty ever really stood. Sometimes, Snoop didn't just twist the truth, he flat out made things up. One of the wildest examples, he once claimed that Tupac was the one who introduced him to blunts. Sounds like a cool story to tell, right? But the timeline doesn't even make sense. Cameron Diaz once admitted that back in high school, she used to buy weed from Snoop. That means Snoop had been deep in that lifestyle long before Pac ever came into the picture. So why tell a story that clearly doesn't add up? The answer's simple: image and legacy. Snoop knows how powerful the public's nostalgia for Tupac still is, so he keeps building this idea that they were tighter than they really were. He rewrites history just enough to make himself look like Pac's closest ally, the loyal brother who carried on his memory. But people close to Pac weren't buying it, not even a little. Napoleon, from Tupac's own Outlaws crew, straight up called Snoop out. He said, "That's a false narrative. Pac wasn't disliked in prison, he was respected." In other words, Snoop just made that up to sound more connected than he really was. And it didn't stop there. Snoop even dragged Nas into one of his stories. He told this dramatic tale about Tupac confronting Nas at the 1996 VMAs, saying Nas pulled up with 100 shooters while Pac stood his ground like a soldier. It sounded wild, but according to Napoleon, who was actually there, it never went down like that. In truth, Pac and Nas met like grown men and cleared the air peacefully. Nas himself later confirmed that Snoop's version was pure nonsense. So once again, the pattern repeats. Snoop creates myths after legends pass, puts himself in their stories as the loyal brother, and distracts the public from how differently he acted when those same legends were still alive. It's that rewriting of history that keeps his name floating in controversy even decades later.
Up, man. I just want to send prayers out to Nipsey Hussle and his family, to Lauren London and her family. Up, man.
Now let's get into the Biggie side of the story. After Tupac's death, Snoop started presenting himself as being tight with Biggie. Like they shared these deep, emotional conversations full of peace and mutual respect. He painted this picture of brotherhood and healing between two hip-hop giants. But according to Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, all that was just media spin. Gene Deal called it out plain and simple. He said if Snoop and Biggie were really that close, why didn't they ever hang out when Biggie was in LA? It didn't make sense. Then Snoop turned around and claimed he ran into Biggie in Atlanta after Pac's death. Come on now, that story doesn't line up. It's the same old pattern. Snoop reshaping history to make himself look like he was right in the middle of every legendary chapter. And that same pattern takes us right back to Nipsey Hussle. Because if you've been paying attention, You already see how this plays out. Nipsey dies, Snoop cries, calls him my dear brother, drops a heartfelt tribute track, and the fans, heartbroken and emotional, eat it up. But when you take a closer look, things start to feel off. Sure, Snoop warned Nipsey about the dangers around him, but at the same time, he was seen hanging out with Big U, the very man Nipsey himself had warned others about. That connection raised serious questions. Nipsey even dropped a diss track directly aimed at Big U, making it clear he didn't want to be controlled or extorted by anybody. The streets already knew the whispers, that Big U had been pressing Nipsey for money, making him pay so-called protection fees. And when Nipsey finally stopped paying, tragedy followed not long after. So when people saw Snoop chilling with Big U after all that, it didn't sit right. It looked like he was cozying up to the same forces Nipsey tried to break free from. To fans, it felt like deja vu, another round of Snoop stepping into the picture after the loss, positioning himself next to the pain and the power at the same time. Once again, history seems to repeat itself. Just like with Tupac, just like with Biggie, when the legend is alive, Snoop somehow ends up around the opposition. But when that legend is gone, he steps into the spotlight as the grieving brother, rewriting the story and centering himself in their legacy. That's the pattern people can't ignore anymore. And that's exactly why so many believe Nipsey's death wasn't just some random street hit. Sure, Eric Holder pulled the trigger, but Eric didn't plan the whole thing. There were bigger forces in the background. People with real money, real influence, and way more to lose if Nipsey's vision kept growing. His rise threatened the system. And now, with new leaks and whispers surfacing, folks are starting to say Snoop might be confirming what the streets have been whispering for years. The talk isn't just about outsiders anymore, it's about who was standing close to Nipsey at the end. And that's where Lauren London's name keeps getting pulled in. Some are now claiming she wasn't just trapped in the crossfire, she might have unknowingly been right in the middle of it. It's a claim that's shaken fans deeply because it changes the way people view everything that happened before that fatal day. As Nipsey's life moved toward its final chapter, he started stepping back from certain circles, turning down industry events, refusing to check in, and making it clear he wouldn't play into anyone's extortion games. But imagine if one of the friends beside him had ties to the very people he was trying to escape. That's the haunting what if fans can't stop thinking about. Because one thing about Snoop, he's always known how to survive the storm. Every time tragedy hits, he somehow walks away untouched, even stronger. And when Nipsey Hussle was murdered on March 31st, 2019, it wasn't just another heartbreaking headline. It was an earthquake that shook the entire culture. The impact rippled far beyond Los Angeles, sending shockwaves through millions of hearts and leaving everyone asking the same chilling question, who really stood behind it all?
It's crazy how the streets don't love it, but we still be loving the streets and shit.
Nipsey Hussle's impact didn't just echo through music. It flowed through culture, through entire communities around the world. For so many people, Nipsey wasn't just a rapper they played in the car or streamed on Spotify. He was proof that greatness could rise straight out of the struggle. He showed that you could come from nothing, rise above the chaos of the streets, and build something real without ever selling out to the system. Fans connected with him on a whole different level. They didn't just love his lyrics, they respected how he lived those words. When he talked about ownership, it wasn't talk. He owned his masters. When he rapped about giving back, he wasn't fronting. He reinvested in Crenshaw, building businesses that created jobs for people the world had already written off. Nipsey didn't just rhyme about loyalty, he lived it. Even when fame and money gave him every reason to walk away from the block, he stayed right there, standing beside his people. So when the news broke that Nipsey had been gunned down right in front of his own Marathon store, the same place that stood as a monument to his grind and his vision, it felt like the world stopped. The pain hit instantly. In Los Angeles, crowds filled the streets outside the Marathon store. People brought flowers, candles, handwritten letters, even murals, turning that corner into holy ground. Strangers hugged strangers, crying together like family, because in a way, that's exactly what they were. Nipsey had been the voice of South Central, but his reach stretched way past those streets. He became a symbol of resilience that touched people across the world, reminding everyone that power doesn't come from privilege. It comes from purpose. Murals of Nipsey started popping up everywhere, not just across Los Angeles, but all over the country. From Houston to New York, from Chicago to Miami, and even overseas, from London to Lagos, walls turned into canvases honoring his legacy. Each one carried the same powerful message. The marathon continues. Social media exploded with tributes, hashtags, and emotional posts. For weeks, it felt like the whole culture paused to grieve, like time itself stood still. But fans weren't just mourning a man, they were mourning a mission. Nipsey represented something bigger than rap. He was a living blueprint for how to build a future on your own terms. He proved that you could reject the industry's games, keep your independence, and still rise to the top. So when his life was cut short, it left people asking the hardest question of all. If someone like Nipsey, a man doing everything right for his people, could still be gunned down in his own neighborhood, then what hope was left for anyone else? The loss hit deeper than most could process. Nipsey's death didn't just crush fans, it shattered the artists who looked up to him. To younger rappers, Nipsey wasn't just a peer or collaborator. He was a mentor, a big brother figure who showed them that staying true to yourself didn't mean staying small. Roddy Ricch has said it publicly. Nipsey believed in him when others didn't. Nipsey gave him guidance, pushed him harder, and reminded him to think beyond just the music. That kind of support lit a fire in Roddy that still burns today. Losing Nipsey wasn't just losing a partner in the studio. It was losing a guiding light in real life. And then there was one of Nipsey's closest brothers in the game. When the news hit, YG broke down in front of everyone. The pain was raw, real, and impossible to hide. That moment showed just how deep Nipsey's love ran through the culture. Because his loss didn't just leave a void in music, it left a hole in the heart of the entire community. YG said it best. He didn't just lose a collaborator, he lost a brother. Their track, Last Time That I Checked, had already become a street anthem, but what they shared went way deeper than music. They were two men trying to flip the same streets that raised them, turning pain into purpose. YG admitted that Nipsey pushed him to dream bigger, to stop chasing just fame and start building something real, something that could outlive them both. When Nipsey was taken, YG confessed it felt like part of his own vision died too. Even hip-hop's biggest names stepped forward to honor what Nipsey stood for. Kendrick Lamar, known for his conscious, truth-telling bars, saluted Nipsey as the purest representation of Los Angeles. Raw, fearless, and visionary. And Jay-Z? He took it to another level, quietly setting up a trust fund for Nipsey's children, Imani and Cross, making sure their father's legacy would continue long after the headlines faded. That one move spoke louder than any tribute verse. It showed the deep respect Nipsey commanded from the highest levels of the culture. Nipsey's influence didn't stop at rap. It stretched into every corner of the world. Athletes, actors, even politicians felt his energy. LeBron James called him an inspiration, and former President Barack Obama personally sent a letter to Nipsey's memorial, praising him for his commitment to lifting up his community. That's not just respect, that's impact. Nipsey wasn't just a rapper. He was a leader who broke barriers and crossed cultural lines with ease. And maybe the most heartbreaking part? He was just getting started. His long-awaited album Victory Lap had finally dropped, earning him a Grammy nomination and proving that independent artists could win big on their own terms. After years of grinding, Nipsey had finally arrived at the top of his game, only for it all to be cut short just as the world was beginning to realize how powerful his legacy truly was. Victory Lap wasn't the finish line, it was just the start of Nipsey's grand plan. Behind the scenes, Nipsey was building something way bigger than music. He was creating a real estate empire right in the heart of South Central. He wasn't chasing mansions in Beverly Hills. He was buying back the same blocks he grew up on. His mission was clear: transform the neighborhood into a safe zone for the next generation, a place where opportunity could replace fear. He poured his energy into tech investments, funding startups and backing STEM programs for kids in the hood who had never been given that kind of shot before. He wanted them to dream beyond rap, to see themselves as innovators, creators, and leaders in spaces that had long been closed off to them. Nipsey wasn't chasing fame, he was building infrastructure. He said it many times, he wanted to be more than a rapper. He wanted to be a mogul, a boss who could shift the power in hip-hop away from corporations and back into the hands of the artists who actually create the culture. That's why other rappers never viewed Nipsey as competition. They looked up to him as a leader. He wasn't blocking the path, he was clearing it. He was showing the next generation that independence wasn't just possible, it was powerful. While Nipsey was alive, the West Coast didn't just have another star, it had a visionary. Someone capable of reshaping the entire industry from the inside out. But when he was killed, that unstoppable momentum came to a heartbreaking halt. The Marathon brand still stands strong, and his message continues to inspire millions. But the full vision of what Nipsey could have built was stolen the moment those shots echoed outside his store. That's why his death hurt on a different level. It wasn't just about losing a man, it was about losing a future. Fans saw him as hope in human form. Artists saw him as the blueprint for ownership and freedom. Whole communities saw him as living proof that you could rise from the hood and lift everyone up with you. And when that light was taken away, it felt like the system had claimed another victory. A victory that came at the cost of the culture's brightest leader. Once again, it's the same heartbreaking story. A visionary taken from the world right when he was about to change it forever. But if there's one thing Nipsey always reminded us, it's that the marathon continues. And after his death, those words became more than a slogan. They became a movement. Murals, tattoos, songs, foundations, and endless social media posts all carried his message forward, keeping his vision alive in the hearts of millions. But no tribute, no mural, no hashtag can ever fill the emptiness of what was lost. Nipsey Hussle wasn't just a rapper. He was a leader, a teacher, a father, and a businessman who was rewriting the definition of success for his community. His death wasn't just personal, it was cultural theft. The world didn't just lose an artist, it lost a revolution in progress. And here's where it gets painful. The deeper people looked, the more questions started surfacing. As fans mourned and artists vowed to carry on his mission, whispers began spreading that maybe this wasn't just another random act of street violence. Maybe Eric Holder was only the hand that pulled the trigger, but not the mind behind the play. The streets started buzzing that some of the people closest to Nipsey, the ones who should have been protecting him, might have unknowingly opened the door for those who wanted him gone. That's why so many fans today aren't just heartbroken, they're furious. Furious at the thought that someone with as much reach and power as Diddy could have had hidden influence in the shadows. Furious at the rumors suggesting that Lauren London, the woman who stood before the world, tears in her eyes, mourning the man she loved, might have had deeper industry ties than anyone ever realized. And then there's Snoop Dogg, the so-called brother figure who always seems to appear right in the center of every tragedy, offering words of tribute while questions swirl around his loyalty. People can't ignore the pattern anymore. Every time a legend falls, Snoop is there with the microphone in his hand and mystery in the air. That's what makes this story sting so deeply. It's not just about grief anymore, it's about betrayal. The culture is still mourning Nipsey Hussle, but it's also demanding answers, because the streets won't rest until the truth behind his death finally comes to light. The pain of losing Nipsey Hussle didn't fade, it evolved. That grief turned into suspicion. The suspicion turned into outrage, and that outrage became a full-blown demand for truth. Fans aren't buying the simple story anymore. Eric Holder did it just isn't enough. Because when you step back and see the full picture, it's clear Nipsey wasn't just murdered by one man, he was silenced by an entire system built on greed, power, betrayal, and control. The deeper you look, the darker it gets. The footage of Snoop and Lauren looking a little too close, the whispers about Lauren's alleged ties to Diddy's circle, and Snoop's long trail of questionable loyalty going back to Tupac and Biggie, it all starts to paint a chilling picture. This wasn't just another tragedy, it was a setup that reached far beyond the streets. Because when you connect those dots, it hits you. Nipsey's death wasn't the end of the marathon. It was the start of something even more sinister. What fans and artists truly lost wasn't just a man. It was the future he was building for everyone who believed in him. The blueprint for independence, empowerment, and change was ripped away, and the hardest truth to accept, that future may not have been stolen by strangers, but by the very people who stood closest to him. And that's what makes this story so haunting. It's not just about loss anymore, it's about truth. Who really benefited from Nipsey's death? Who kept his vision from fully rising? Those are the questions the world still demands answers to. Thank you for watching. If you felt this breakdown hit deep, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. The conversation isn't over. The marathon still continues.